Welcome to the Breakfast Lounge, your daily talk show on 102.7 FM, featuring special guests with your host, Lady Grace. Now let's get started.
Of course, welcome back right here. Sorry for that little delay there because the minister is a busy man, so I gave him time enough to jog it from the government administration building to get over here. Minister, hi, good morning, and welcome back.
Morning. Thank you for having me. Morning, St.Maarten. Apologies for being late, but duty calls. Very often.
All right, Minister. Of course. Let me throw this out here that you were basically on the chopping block the other day. Wow.
Yeah.
How did that feel though?
Grace, and it's always, I think it's always humbling. And I think anybody who will sit down and tell you that they're not humbled by a vote of no confidence is not telling you the truth. I think despite whatever you try to do and however hard you work, being potentially criticized and judged for the work that you're doing is, to anybody, even as comfortable as they are or as confident in what they've been doing, it's always a time of reflection. And I think one thing, and I mentioned it to you even in the radio station when you were here the last time live on the air, is that you always have to think about, okay, where is this coming from? How could it have been done better? And I think, and I said it to you again, strong communication and recognizing that a lot of people don't know how government works, and you have to break it down. And one of the key things I think I have learned in this is that you have to keep it simple. Keep it very simple, keep it very straightforward, and recognize that people are going to take opportunities where communication and knowledge aren't readily available to most of the population, and they're going to use it against them. And we saw it play out as well in the meeting. Actually, the meeting was about a vote of no confidence, and then the whole situation, the Simpson Bay tree happened, I think the night before, and then one of the key things that happened was you saw MP Duran indicate that it is actually me who issued this land parcel. And it's very interesting because, not to get too long into it, but I think if you look at the trajectory of what's happening and what happened, it's very clear that it's not Patrice Gumbs, it's MP, then Minister Duran, who did this. And Grace, by chance today, I made sure to bring all documentation because people seem to have missed that all documentation was shared during Parliament. The MP went on the radio again yesterday indicating that I lied. And what he did show, and I'll show everybody what he showed.
Sure, put it up on the screen so everyone can see it.
What the MP showed was a 2025 extract that showed, for example, the transfer of land to a entity, August 20th, 2025, claiming that then I extended the information. This is public documentation that could be given to anybody in St.Maarten.
Which land we're talking? Basically, the Simpson Bay property?
This is the Simpson Bay property. So what you're looking at here now is, this is a transfer. It's called the right of issuance, the issuance of the land given in 2025, which in time I was the minister at that time. Now, reading this alone, it would seem as if Patrice, now Minister Vromi, issued this land. Not the case. Grace, let's go back to when this land was actually issued and why this had to happen. What I have in front of me here, and I showed this, and this is where it becomes very scary when members of Parliament, in their role claiming to be transparent and for the people, give information. You've been presented this information. This information says January 16th, 2023. It references het verzoek van, so the request of, from 23rd of May 2022, from named person representing the name company for an uitbreiding. An uitbreiding is an extension. Now, it goes on to say that this parcel of land of 195 square meters is in front of 64-1963, and it needs to be measured. And when it's measured, it's going to be given the deed number 205-2022. What does this all mean, St.Maarten? The request to allow this to happen, that means to create that parcel of land, which was up until that time public beach, happened in 2023 and was decreed by the then minister in 2023, sending Cadastre to go and measure the parcel of public beach, to issue that parcel of public beach to this company, and it would be under the number 205-2022. It even clarifies to you, it will be in front of 64-1963.
Did you receive a copy, Minister, of the document that the former minister presented in Parliament?
So no, actually this is the documentation we found, and we actually presented this to Parliament, and the then minister, now MP Duran, sat down reading this documentation. Before he knew I had it, he indicated I lied because he only read this. But I explained to everyone how we got to this. But in 2023, January 16th, a signature was given to please go measure the beach, 185 square meters in front of an existing parcel. This is where the building permit for the property is, and give this number 205-2022, January 16th.
Okay.
Now, Grace, read here for me whose signature was this, January 16, 2023. Because as far as I know, in 2023, I was head of foreign affairs. I wasn't the minister of Vromi.
Okay.
So whose signature is this? And not even signature, whose typed name is it?
Let me put this up on my screen as well so the viewers can see that too. Okay.
Great. So now we go forward. A building permit is issued 183-2022. Again, Grace, in 2022, Patrice Gumbs was the minister of Vromi. I was in foreign affairs, completely different department, ministry. Never even thought of becoming minister of Vromi. A building permit is issued 2022. Linked to a parcel of land issued 2023, issued 2022. Now, why I say it's important people are educated in this is because every parcel of land in St.Maarten is linked to a number in the front that identifies the parcel number and then the year it's actually made. There could be nowhere that I could have issued this parcel of land in 2022. But you see, the MP uses the opportunity that people may not know that bit of information about how Vromi, Cadastre, and land registration works. Any parcel of land, you know exactly when it's been made and deeded because it has a certain number a year after it. Going forward now, what happened now in 2025 that I signed off on? And Grace, I have, of course, as always, my documentation here. Now,
take your time, of course.
Nope.
We want to hear it. Of course, the
Let me
viewers want to
find,
see it
'cause
too.
now, of course.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Okay.
Now, April 15th, 2025. Now Patrice Gumbs is minister. So all of this has happened prior to me. What has happened prior to me? A request to issue what was then public beach land to a private entity. 1, 2, a building permit to build on the area 64-1963 with use of 205-2022. What happens in 2025? April 15th, now read it, had verzoek of 25th of October 2024. So a request came in 2024, October 25th, from the legal entity to transfer the ERFPAC rights. So the request from 2025 to transfer the right of long lease from the following May brief numbers: 64-1963 and TADA 205-2022 to new legal entity.
So this is the basically the figures that you actually shared from dating back from 2022.
Exactly.
Now they're requesting actually
so
for 2025.
What this documentation tells you, what I received as Minister of Vromi in October 2024 was a request to transfer parcels already made and owned by somebody else.
Okay.
You
And
see,
paid for.
And paid for. So what this is now and why now, and the question came up on the floor of Parliament, yes, but couldn't you have not done it if you didn't like it? Grace, no. That's not good governance. What I feel about property or persons is not how I'm supposed to govern a country. That's like, for example, saying that because somebody got a building permit and it wasn't done the right way, because they want to sell the piece of the house that's on government land, I'm going to stop the sale. I can't do that, Grace. That's illegal. The minute everything happens, everybody has a certain period of time in which they can object to a decision. After that, it's done. There is no space for objection. This is done in 2022. In 2024, 2 years later, a request comes in that's processed in 2025. So any kind of insinuation that I could have stopped this is incorrect. The persons maintain that what they own, they've paid for. It's clearly written. The request is coming in 2024 for land that I have already in my possession ownership. Mm-hmm. So how...
Did the construction already started on the property?
In the 2024?
In the 20, yeah, right.
No. From what
Okay.
I remember, I don't believe so. It didn't start. I do know that there was sort of kind of this sort of perimeter fencing off that started to happen. But the first excavations now started under my term.
Okay.
So I just want to show everybody again exactly what I'm talking about here in the camera. Unfortunately, it's in Dutch, but it's very clear.
Oh,
for
a
those
lot
who
of
can
us speak
snapshot
Dutch.
it.
All right. Okay.
And it says very clearly what I received in 2024 was a request to transfer these parcels. Grace, if government does not transfer persons' parcels that they own, there's several things that can happen. You have to justify why, what happened, what is the legal basis that was not fulfilled, either in the deed of purpose or whatever else have you, that doesn't allow me to transfer. And that's not the case. So the reality is, unless I have that, I cannot deny a transfer. In transfers, my role as the Minister of Vromi is to just sign, recognizing that this is happening and meets all legal requirements. There is no emotion involved in transfers. That then makes good governance impossible. If everyone sat down and had to operate government based on how they feel and who they like, you'll have anarchy. That's not good governance. That's personal decision making, which I have told St.Maarten I am not about. And again, just to show you what I received and what was signed off, and this. So when I hear, for example, that I made the request, this is then what the MP showed. Of course, a registration from the cadastre indicating that this transfer from company A to company B took place. And of course it reads, it happens under execution date, registration date 2025, but all I did was facilitate sale. I didn't create land on the beach. And I think for me, it's very sad to see members of parliament who claim to have concerns and transparency and people at heart use information that doesn't paint the full picture. And then when they receive the information, because I provided all documentation for Parliament, because what I didn't want to have happen is, the delay tactic of, can we get all documentation? I said, Madam Chair, to the Honourable MP, all documentation has been provided. So it's very clear for everybody to see what happened. And I think for me, it's very dangerous and scary to see that then you have an MP come on the radio after being provided all information that he's still saying that I am lying. Why would you lie with documentation that's been submitted to Parliament and is now in the public domain? That's very, very scary, Grace.
Minister, does this also apply to the Kupokoi high-rise controversy, where residents accused of Vromi of allowing a commercial-scale development under a residential permit? Did your ministry fail to properly protect nearby homeowners and zoning standards?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the biggest topics, again, about if you read what is that area zoned for, and I've said time and time again, it's across St.Maarten's concern, what we are building doesn't match our zoning. And again, why is it important to consider those things? It's not because you just don't want a high rise. It's the reality is that infrastructurally, the more you allow things to be built that doesn't have the capacity, you have a big problem. So if you have a high density high rise, it needs a lot more water and pressure to push water up to a higher floor. We don't have that capacity. We're currently working with GB along with VSA, Minister Bruch, in terms of addressing capacity increasing for that whole entire area because it's a challenge with water. And this is why zoning is so important, because zoning helps you to prepare the infrastructure to support development. And this is why I talk about all the time, I'm not against development, but it has to be done sustainably. If you want a 10, 15-story tower, by all means, you can have it once it fits within the relatives, and we're doing the rezoning, but you need to make sure that when I flush my toilet on the 25th floor, my toilet could flush because the water pressure has to take it to that level. So again, a lot of things that we have seen being built over time, and I said it again, this whole entire discussion around the tree is not about the tree. And it's about how people are feeling in a society where they're constantly seeing things happening
So basically,
that doesn't work.
playing on emotions, so to speak.
Yeah, I think you mean in terms of
You had there was a zoning meeting on I think it was like 2-3 days ago in Parliament. Today's Thursday. When was it?
Yeah, so actually there was a nature policy meeting.
Nature policy
on
meeting.
Monday to actually address.
And wasn't it ironic that on that same day?
Yeah, and and for me it's ironic because then I'm confronted with questions on Tuesday to motivate why you're trying to send me home, but the things that we're trying to do to fix some of the things you mentioned was in a zoning and a nature policy that you didn't attend. So then everyone is writing concerns about, the tree, the people. I'm like, guys, let's be real. We cannot talk about a nature policy and all the concern about our people in St.Maarteners if we don't fix the foundation. And what I said time and time again, I am not here to go in the past. I'm here to make sure the past doesn't happen again. Whatever happened in the past, we governed in a way that made sense to us then with what we had. Was it right or wrong? Let somebody else judge that history. I'm here to make it as better as possible, as best as I can. I'm not going to solve all the problems of St.Maarten, but what I'm not going to do is allow people to continue to fool the people because they don't have all the information readily available to them. Not everybody knows that they can go to the cadastre and get an extract.
Okay.
And there's also a payment wall. You have to pay for this information. Me as the minister, I took a lot of things. I said, here, public, here's the information, here's the truth. Stop letting people fool you. And I think the reality is, more and more throughout this mandate, people are feeling comfortable to come out and voice their opinion about things like sewage problems in Middle Region and Soccer Garden that have been plaguing some families for 30 years. It was always hush, hush, hush. They've now seen somebody who's trying to tackle it. And of course, it's going to come out as if Minister Gumbs is the problem. Garbage. Grace, like I told it in the floor of Parliament, when I remember campaigning January 2024, garbage was a big discussion along GB. Somehow, all of a sudden, garbage is Minister Gumbs' problem. But again, if we have nothing to jump on, because what Minister Gumbs doesn't do is take parcels of land on the beach and issue, we're going to find every problem of 30 years and put on Patrice Gumbs. And like I said, buddy, before, look beyond the headlines. Ask yourself, what is being reported, by who, and why? I think people are very frustrated by everything. Economic opportunities, traffic, garbage, roads. As an opposition who dealt with the same problems and did very little structurally to address it, give somebody else and this government the time to put things in place. I said it in Parliament, Grace, a lot of the times people look at government as being something that has to do a quick win. And a quick win is very important. I'm not going to lie. We can't sit down and constantly think of policies. You have to kind of address things quickly when you can. But if you run a country for 5, 10, 20, 30 years on quick wins, the reality is you don't have a strong foundation. And I said in Parliament, if we continue to look at these quick wins for votes and popularity, we're building our country and our people in vain. And that's my core message today, because what I saw transpired in the floor of Parliament was, one, an abuse of the people because the knowledge is not there, and again, political grandstanding by the MP Durand, foreign minister, who signed off on that parcel of land. And then the worst part was, then you have the discussions about, oh, they picked coalition over country. But the same opposition members, some of them sat down and to support MP Duran asked questions, giving the impression to support what he was saying. What are we doing, Grace? Grace, this country is at a critical point. Between the high costs, the whole Iran thing, the potential hantavirus,
Ebola.
It's Ebola. We keep on dealing with a lot of petty things. And of course, then when I bring things forward in facts, I become petty. But apparently, allegedly. And we're not focusing on educating our people to teach them that listen, don't let somebody make a whole discussion around something. If somebody knew 2022, oh, that could never be Patrice. But you know that they don't know. And you know that they don't know how to take the dust and get information. So of course you're going to lie.
Yeah. Now, while we're on that topic though, who's actually the construction down on Simpson Bay? I believe that's on a pause right now because they had to.
The tree is up.
You dig the tree up, but the tree also at the same time, sometimes trees go through shock too. So by putting the tree back up, next thing you know, the tree can't, it can't grow again because you already shocked the roots in the tree. But who are the overseers here? Isn't this your job? Actually, not your job, but from the ministry itself, that when there's a project, actually, there's an ongoing project, to have someone actually survey the work, that's making sure that they're sticking to the plan. Because when you get the contractor now saying that, oh, it was an accident, and which means it because of, you already had uprooted the tree, but now the fact that it was, the residents that came out and saw it, that, it was a oops moment. Yeah,
and and I think I said this too, by chance, actually, Vromi does do regular inspection. And 2 weeks ago, before this tree fell, inspection actually went out, speaking to the contractor.
It didn't fall.
With persons within the community.
It was uprooted.
And said, you need to protect this tree.
You did say that.
Yes, this is exactly what Vromi said. You cannot touch this tree. One, because beautiful tree, but two, it's actually within the ministry of Vromi, as well as Ekis. This is listed as a class 1 tree from St.Maarten. So this tree actually has been documented already as being something of value and known to the ministry of Vromi and Education, Culture, Youth and Sport. That does not mean necessarily you can't develop near or around the tree.
Correct.
It means you have to do everything in your power to protect it. And this is known. So when you do things like issue land, you need to also consider those things, because then you put the bound of the new parcel smack in the middle of the tree. That wasn't Patrice. So for me, inspection does what inspection needs to do. Do we have a capacity issue? Yes, we do. But when we see certain projects around certain things, inspections are ramped up. And in this particular instance, we did inspect, we gave notification, do not touch this tree. And here we are today.
And you have the residents of Simpson Bay up in arms now because they were already burdened with with so much construction going on now in their area, which was a peaceful area, which now has become it's not much of a residential area anymore with all the projects that are going up there.
And I think for me, and this is one of the discussions that we're having, because St.Maarten is changing. And there's a very polarizing discussion happening about, do we want to remain the St.Maarten of 1970s, 80s, or are we going towards something that's different? And that's a discussion that we need to have as a collective people. We cannot have that discussion in a dollars and cents conversation. I've said this before already, that, and we had press briefing, and one of the journalists asked, yeah, but Minister, I'm sure it's not necessarily locals who are pro these developments. I said, actually, they are. They are persons who are in the construction industry and they're locals and they benefit from it. But at the flip side, when then they can't afford one of the same condos that they've just built, it becomes we're overdeveloped. So we have to also hold ourselves accountable to recognize that, yes, these permits are being given by ministers, but it's also oftentimes that the people are also pushing to have these permits done. And that's a very uncomfortable place for us as St.Maarteners to be in, because we want to benefit from the construction side of it, but the long-term impact of it, meaning that then our children and grandchildren can't afford these very same properties, is an uncomfortable place to be. We have to look at. And I think what we're doing as a ministry is looking very seriously at zoning. There's been draft zoning since 2013, a draft zoning law that hasn't been officially made into a law, but the court ruling a couple of months ago indicated that though it's not officially a law, because you use it so often for the last 14 years, it's an embedded policy within how you have to decision make within the Ministry of Vromi. Thus, a lot of the court cases that were, according to MP Duran, losing on purpose are lost because they did not consider those existing policies. Why would I, as minister, have the country go into a financial loss with the courts to make a point to make MP Duran look bad? That's insane. And I said it on the floor of Parliament on Tuesday. I think this constant assumption that you try to make that this is personal or political is getting very tired. This has nothing to do with you. This is about how we move the country forward. By chance, we actually have won several cases on decisions made by MP Duran. But for some reason, what sells and what gets the votes and gives the impression that Patrice is against a small man development is that I'm losing everything for the sake of politics. Grace, let me tell you something about me. I think people always tell me, you're very strange. People live and die. People live and die by political affiliation. I have sat down, I have advised several prime ministers since 2013 to 2024. Even the last prime minister before this one, who I had just run against, advised, because I'm a professional. And I think a lot of people think, okay, but then, I say, yes, political, but at the same time, I cannot keep everything political because it destroys my country. If I have to decide everything that is pro-PFP, not everything PFP says is something that is always going to be the best way forward. So I have to be also critical of my party and what the decisions that they make are, but not everybody can do that. And I think this is why we are today where we are, with sewage soccer garden, potholes everywhere. And when we try and fix things, we're constantly running behind ourselves because we haven't structured development. We just respond ad hocly. And my whole point of my mandate has been, let's get it done structurally better. Put my head down, put things in place to let it roll out in time. And I think we do quick fixes as we can, because you have to. You can't let the road just sit down there. Quick fixes, yes, but how are you going to have this problem addressed that 10 years from now, we're not hustling looking for coal asphalt. We're not hustling trying to figure out a guardrail. We're not hustling trying to fix a sewage problem because we have put things in place.
But due to your lack of transparency, that lack of communication is one of the reasons why you're in this position right now.
And I say to that as well, and I think too, I took for granted that people like to see every single step of a process. I'm a person, and people are surprised, and everybody's saying, Patrice, you're doing a lot, but you're taking for granted that people understand what government does and how it works. A lot of the different road things that are going on, a lot of the improvements that are going on, we're currently undertaking. I don't go take a picture because as that's happening and taking place, I have to go on to the next problem. But the political side, which I think, you're learning as you go, the political side requires you to stand up there and kind of explain why you're doing it. And I think, too, one of the things I've recognized is breaking things down for people. Press releases, press briefings, they work for some. You need to meet people at every single level. And I always knew it, but then when you have a set of problems that really, like the Ministry of Vromi has, that needs constant attention, you don't always have the time to sit down and explain, hey guys, today I did this, tomorrow I'm doing this. You just hope that people can see what you're doing, and oftentimes that doesn't always happen. So the communication really has to be tailored and constant.
Minister, 2 years into your term, what measurable improvements can our residents actually point to today, especially regarding roads? Because the last time you were here, we didn't really touch fully on roads, but we need to touch on that again. The abandoned vehicles, we're seeing more and more of those, drainage and waste management.
Yeah, so I think one of the key things we can touch on is that we've actually, and people might not recognize it or see it but it's happening, we've done a major overhaul of how we manage garbage. It's slow to come, but I want to remind everybody that when I came into this office, there was literally no documentation, no kind of way to hold haulers or the population actually accountable. So I stated before, there was a whole discussion around, for example, why aren't you firing this hauler? I can't. Because the contract says I have to do X, Y, Z, put in place, and that's what's been happening. So, for example, certain districts have actually seen a lot of improvement. Simpson Bay is one, Cahill, parts of Down Street. You've seen it also in the sort of the cul-de-sac area in the beginning. They've already measured a significant improvement because we started doing tracking. Because again, if you're going to say, oh, there's no garbage, you can't do anything with information. You have to structure everything. So actually the reporting and how we hold haulers accountable, we've changed 2 haulers already. And one of the interesting things is that people are trying to say is that I'm being personal. It's not. It's just trying to do it the correct way. Secondly, I think permits and domain affairs, there has been a significant backlog in those things for sure. But one of the things that we've actually done is we've actually asked for subsidy to increase capacities in the ministry. Actually, one of the first compliments I've gotten was, Minister, for the first time, I'll tell you, the word on the street is the average middle-class man is actually getting the building permit relatively quickly. But of course, what goes out via the paid journalism and people who have an agenda is nothing is happening in the permits department. Houses, small houses, things are moving faster than before. What you've also seen as well, domain affairs, in terms of we're also doing a whole digital structuring that's happening because we need to make it more efficient. And finally, I think domain affairs, we're working on that. The transfers, the extensions, that we're working on. People are seeing more communication from within the ministry is coming. We're also structurally working on that. I think also what you're also seeing more is a lot more education of how government works, and that's very important as well for people as a whole.
All right. Minister, also, you announced an ambitious housing policy targeting 1,200 new homes over the next decade. Now, given the island's limited land, rising construction costs, and long-standing bureaucratic delays, what makes you confident that this plan will become reality rather than another unfulfilled policy document?
Yeah, so I think what's also very important, Grace, to recognize is this housing policy is not at all about 1,200 houses done by government. The policy clearly states government needs to look at its role in terms of what it's supposed to do. The idea has always been that government is supposed to build government houses. The policy shifts that change completely to be that actually government has to facilitate. So if government has policies and rules in place, do these policies and rules within the Ministry of Vromi support actually getting affordable housing? And if not, how are you going to actually do it? And the objective of then is to make sure that out of the policy changes, you're going to have those amounts of houses come into play. So for example, the policy gives things like, okay, you have a hillside policy, you have a density rule. The policy indicates, listen, limited space on St.Maarten, you need to consider, for example, giving a bit more room where possible to go in a bigger footprint. We actually, in the past, had a denied building permit for a project. We turned around, I said, you know, guys, pull that permit for me. Let's go over it again. Because one, it was affordable housing. Yes, the scale was bigger than is required, but then let's substantiate it, because confirm with the developers how much those houses are going to cost. If they're going to cost that, check if we can ensure that they have enough parking. Check if we can ensure they have enough capacity to carry sewage and not impact their neighbors. Check. I will then do a request to deviate and allow that development to happen for affordable housing for our people. And that's something that we did in line with the housing policy. So you have essentially about 16 units of affordable housing coming online because we're using the policy. Otherwise, those would not have been allowed. So the idea isn't that government is going to sit down and basically build 1,200 houses in 12 years. Is that government will do some part where we build those houses and other parts where we say, listen, our rules are this, but if our rules can be adjusted to support and ensure affordable housing, let's do it. And I think some of the things that came out on the floor of Parliament was, you know, how are you going to put 1,200 houses in Belvedere? I'm like, you clearly did not read the policy. The policy came about before we even purchased Belvedere. So it shows you again what people want you to know and how they want you to think is what they're going to say. Had they read the policy, the first thing was government won't do this alone. It's private companies and stakeholders with government support and facilitation, and that's what's been missing. You need that kind of support from the government, but let the private sector guide you in terms of what the market actually needs, because government's understanding is always policies and theory. People on the ground is who you consult with what's really happening.
Right. Have you already created a roadmap to alleviate the traffic congestion, Minister?
Yeah. So actually, it's actually twofold. And I think what's interesting is that we've had this discussion for a very long time within the department, within the ministry. So it's always TEAT, myself, and Justice. TEAT has taken the lead before in terms of a mobility study. And what's really critical about that is that everybody sees traffic as being a Vromi discussion. Vromi is in charge of roads and infrastructure. How you use the roads, the bus network, transportation is in the name TEAT. So what we do as Vromi is our part in terms of assess the roads, their quality, and how they impact mobility flow. But overall mobility, movement of traffic falls really under TEAT. Now, having said that, I'm not a person who's like, that's not my job. We work together. So we have a committee that's been formed. There's a discussion again. I actually reached out because we had an idea that I pitched to the Kobe community about 2 weeks ago already for a plan that we had, and we proposed to them, and they came back to us and they said, here are some critical points that you didn't think about, but also indicated, listen, Minister, the issue is not always about, and they're right, isn't always about new roads. It's about how users use the roads. So it's a question about tell the bus, come off the road and use the bus stop. Use only designated bus stops. Traffic flow, times of when police are there to kind of support traffic flow. They indicated, and several other people who I've spoken to from other districts indicated already, that it's not a question of necessarily needing new roads. And I've said this also in press briefing months ago. It's a question about using the roads efficiently. I announced actually a partnership with UNOPS beginning of last year, I believe it was, where UNOPS said the same thing as well. Before you go out and build new roads, use what you have efficiently. We don't have a lot of efficient traffic flow or movement, and that causes a lot of traffic, because the minute you pass KFC and reach Osborne Croydon roundabout in Cole Bay, there is no traffic. So what's happening between Simpson Bay, the airport, and KFC, the roundabout? That's what you have to address, because when you pass that, all those cars just flow very easily. So mobility, we do have a discussion. We have a plan. We have several positions already. I announced already that we're looking at rehabilitating the Ring Road. This last week, 2 weeks actually, the team from the Vromi operations has been out clearing the entire path of the Ring Road. It's taking quite some time because we're encountering a lot of illegally dumped garbage within the area, a lot of bees. So thanks to the gentleman for going out and enduring a couple of stings for the...
They didn't kill the bees though.
No. So actually what we're trying to do now is get professional bee handlers to kind of remove them.
Please.
Because, bees, despite everything, they actually have a significant role to play in the ecosystem.
They're the ones that are keeping us alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it's, and also too, it's small incremental changes that we can do as Vromi with the assistance of TEAT as well and Justice to make it flow. So yes, a study is coming, but I think what we have to look at too is say, okay, what do we know already is not rocket science. The old KFC when we ran this bank, everybody has a bottleneck in that corner where traffic is basically coming in.
Right.
Make it a roundabout. I announced already that's going to become a roundabout where you're going to use the whole Clem Labega Square as one major roundabout to keep traffic flow going.
Flowing, right.
Instead of everybody doing kind of three different directions in that one little bottleneck corner.
And then, Minister, we're approaching the hurricane season starting June 1st. That's next week. District cleanup campaign. Tell us about that, if there's one in place already.
Yeah. So actually what we started doing last week is the more in-house thing. So all the shelters, they fall in the VSA, but of course Vromi has the role of inspecting sure everything is working. So just last week we checked all shelters with VSA as well as the generators that are there. A report is in. And then actually what we're aiming to do is, once again with the front side, make a very clear messaging about what to expect and what to do for hurricane season. District cleaning, the usual happens as well with waterways and trenches. Those who have the contracts, they're busy already cleaning up. And then, of course, what I'm planning to announce shortly, but I won't just yet, is actually within the next 2 months, a major cleaning of the country, linked as well to the kind of the whole Ring Road cleanup, aggressively, more so than usual, with the car wrecks. Because what people don't realize is that the government picks up car wrecks every single day. The impression that's being given is that nothing is happening. Every single day we do it. Actually, in 2024, we spent 75,000 guilders on picking up car wrecks. That needs to be now escalated to a mass intervention, because I think at this point now, it's become untenable in terms of people are not seeing the wreck as a community problem, it's a government problem. I said it several times, Grace, listen, everybody knows if their neighbor has an illegal garage. Report it. Government does not know what's happening up at house number 15 in Pestle Drive. But you, as a resident, you do know. File a complaint. If you don't hear from the complaint, send it to our QR code. The inspection actually launched a QR code that you can send information to, because you need to bridge the gap between community and government. Yes, there are complaints coming in officially. Is the best way to go, but if you do a quick QR, it comes to the Department of Inspection, and they can respond to it. And we do have official complaint mechanisms. I'll put them on our Facebook page again. But we are not sitting down waiting for anything to happen, but we have to ask the community to please help us as well. We have a capacity issue. Again, we don't know what's happening in every single drive, in every single house. Help us to make St.Maarten a better place. It's really a community and a team building effort.
Right. Is the Vromi department responsible for persons who park their cars on the side of the road and put a for sale sign on them?
So
is that your job?
So there's several things. It's actually a part of a law we don't have in place in St.Maarten. It's in Curacao. It's called
So you
precario.
can't say it's illegal.
You can park your car. Formally, you're supposed to request permission, but that's called precario recht, and we don't have it in St.Maarten, we have it in Curacao.
Okay.
We're actually working to try and see how we can bring that here, linking to also our domain affairs, or our land issuance department, with TEAT. What used to happen in the past is TEAT would say, hey, go ahead and use this parcel of land to put a bar restaurant, and they get a license, and Vromi has no idea, and all of a sudden there's a bar on wherever, Pondfield, Simpson Bay, Cold Bay. You need to strengthen that, but you need that kind of policy in place. We are actually working now to redevelop a number of areas, and we'll be approaching a lot of the persons who are vending. Sometimes for up to 30, 40 years they've been there, and not in the proper way. So we have to also consider that as well, because you just can't move somebody because that's their livelihood. A lot of these small vendors, that's all they rely on. So you want to have a partnership with them where they also feel included in this transition, this rehabilitation of certain
but it
areas.
must be done legally as well.
Yes, exactly. But the problem was that it was done that they have a license from TEAT. So TEAT never told them in the past, well, go to Vromi to go see where you're going to go. They just put that they want to be on Cold Bay. They want to be on Pondfield.
Okay.
So it's about tightening the structure, because the reality is you're not trying to stop people from making money or having a small business, but there's just no way we can support you. Health, sanitation wise, spatial planning wise. These are all things to consider if you want the country to function at its best.
What about the rules that we spoke about for garbage collection? Where are we now with the tenders? The distribution of contracts, and then of course, then there has to be a rule also. You can't put out your garbage on Monday. You can only put your garbage out on Tuesday, so you can get that regulated as well.
So actually, it's actually pretty clearly regulated. In St.Maarten, we're very lucky in the sense of garbage is collected. By law, it has to be collected minimum twice a week. In St.Maarten, we're very lucky because we do it every single day and for free. So every single day, persons can put out garbage. What they can't put out every single day is what you call white waste. So your fridges, your stoves, etc. And that's by law. But of course, you have to have the capacity and the manpower to enforce that, because we can't go to every single house and tell them currently, hey, a stove, hey, and then we have the bigger bins that say on them sometimes no household appliances. And what happens? You see a whole couch and a stove in the bin. It's not government or the hauler who put the bin there. It's the community who just does not care. And I think for me, one of the big things we're going to working on, discussed it actually recently, a community campaign educating people how to actually dispose of garbage. When it comes to the future of the potential new tender, I am going to be contacting the bidders first with the way forward. I think that's very important. The last time we kind of messed up a bit in our communication there, where we understood that they were contacted, but they weren't. So I do want to speak to them first. And then next week, we'll be announcing the way forward with the garbage tenders.
Yeah. And let's go back to Simpson Bay real quickly here, where residents were testing the Simpson Bay development also said their concerns go beyond a single sea grape tree. And they pointed to a broader, not they pointed, but they're actually pointing to a broader fear of overdevelopment, environmental degradation, and loss of beach access. And we see that happening. And it's quite sad, I'm unfortunate, I may say, to see that happening to the village of Simpson Bay. So the control now, at what point, Minister, does economic development become incompatible with protecting St. Martin's limited natural resources? One of the things I'm confronted with, and I've seen so often, and I'm sure a lot of residents are also seeing, that deforestation, of course, the chopping down the trees and then replacing the trees for an umbrella. Who gives you better shade than a tree? You know, and birds, of course, are seeking, you know, a new habitat. And they wake me up every morning at 3 o'clock. It drives me crazy, I must say. But because we are actually just chopping down all the trees.
So I know, you know, and this is part of the bigger discussion about, and I rightfully agree, and I said it myself, and I said it, I've been saying it all mandate, the tree is just the trigger for deeper roots of issues. It represents a lot of things about where am I in my country with opportunities, where am I in my country with being able to afford the most basic things like housing. But it goes back to a bigger thing as well about, one, what is it that government is doing about zoning? But on top of that, and I said it earlier, we have to also be aware that government is elected by the people. The same persons as well who are asking about overdevelopment of the country also have a lot of people in St.Maarten are involved in the construction industry. You don't realize construction is actually our biggest industry. So going back to what I said earlier in this meeting, it's a very awkward conversation that we need to start having. Are we willing to say, hey, we're going to scale back on construction, which will impact a lot of locals who are in the industry for the sake of the environment? That's the first question. The second question is understanding what that means. It means you may have a loss of income, but you actually have a more enjoyable place to live that's a bit easier and better to manage because things are happening slowly and with time. The third thing is, and I said it time and time again, people understand development. And then before I go that, if we accept that that's what we want as a people, you will finally see ministers who are making decisions that actually are linked to environmentalism. Grace, people have been screaming for a minister of Vromi who takes environmentalism into consideration. And then what happens? I come in, I make that a very good and strong component of my mandate, environmentalism. And what do we get? Oh, he for the small man, he blocking development. So here we are getting what it is we've been screaming for. And then we come and say, Patrice saying do nothing because permits are stuck for things that are not supposed to be built. So for me, it's the question of, before we talk about what government needs to do, we have to sit down as the people and also ask ourselves, what type of St.Maarten do we want? And with that discussion, then you'll get ministers who make decisions based on what people want and not what people say they want and realize that they have to actually change it themselves. So for me, a fundamental part of the discussion is, yes, government has a role. But if I, for example, say, guys, we have to increase X now because it costs this to function properly, I will get a lot of backlash. So what I always say is tough decisions have to be taken, but you need an educated population to understand that, listen, guys, if we want this for ourselves, we got to change this. Patrice can't change it without you supporting the ideas. And that's, again, what I say about it being a discussion about all of us. Because if I do something that people don't like, trust and believe Patrice won't be there for very long. And that's where that threat came from this week that went by.
You don't want, I understand. Yeah, we want to develop these buildings and what have you, but you don't want to oversaturate. You know, you don't want to create a concrete jungle, so to speak, and that's basically what we're seeing more of now. But can we have create a law to add some greenery as part of each project?
Yes.
Instead of just putting up only concrete, put some trees, you know.
Grace, and again, it boils into, a lot of people don't recognize this. A lot of these laws are already in our building ordinance.
Oh,
but
they are?
They are. This is why they have the whole discussion around building density. If you have a 400 square meter piece of property, you're supposed to build on 30% of the property to keep it green. One, for the aesthetic question, that green is important, but two, for natural drainage. Because if you go in concrete your whole yard, guess what? That water runs down into your neighbor. These are all built into our building code. The problem is then you have somebody who comes and say, listen, I got a piece of land, I can build 30%, I want to put on apartments, and if I don't get to put on these 5 apartments, I won't break even. So this is a difficult question you have about the long-term vision of density and rules and the quick economic gains. And I recognize that quick economic gains are bread and butter issues. And I mean, you know, environmentalism has always been seen as the talks of an elite set of people who don't really understand what people are going through. But the reality is what we're seeing now is the result of not looking at development structurally and considering the environment.
All right. Now, Minister, before I let you go, you have publicly acknowledged and also here this morning that Vromi suffers from understaffing, politicization, low employee morale, and more than 20 pending court cases. Is the ministry structurally capable of delivering reform under its current institutional culture, or does St.Maarten need a complete overhaul of how Vromi operates?
Yeah, I think government as a whole needs an overhaul. I've been in government as a civil servant since 2013. You have a lot of discussions around something as simple as a function book. The function book tells you the government vacancies, what they should be doing, and their salaries. It's been a scream of mine since I was in Foreign Affairs. We need to update this function book. Coming into Vromi now, even more so than ever, we have people who are, for example, working in our Vromi yard. So that's the operations guys who paint the road, who do the funerals. They're pretty much on minimum wage, and they're working in the sun all day long on a civil servant salary. So yes, the amount of money that you get every month is fixed, but if you're working on roads, funerals, building vaults, cleaning the burying ground, cleaning sewage, going out and supporting, that kind of money isn't a lot. And then you also have the issue of opportunities for growth and development. The demotivation from within the ministry, and I think across the whole of government, and I think when I came in, we had the demonstration about the morale in the government. Vromi was the lowest. Vromi was absolutely at the very bottom because 2 reasons: opportunities for growth, kind of feeling like you're stuck, but also I think the politicization of work in the environment of fear that's been created over time. So for me, you have to focus on the structural things. So the function book will take some time. It hasn't, we've had it done for some parts of government. So the fire, for example, they got the revision, but you need to do it for the whole entire government. That's structural long term. Short term, how do you incentivize your employees? Simple things, you listen. I came into my ministry and I told my permits department, listen, you want me to approve this permit? Okay, I disagree. I'm going to put a memo on it explaining to you why I disagree. Explain, then counter my decision with why you think it should. Let's have a discussion.
Okay.
Because again, what's been happening is I say something as an advisor, you just say no and you tell me nothing. So you feel as if, okay, my value and my advice is not worth it. You want to build that rapport with staff to realize, say, guys, don't just take everything as is. Question everything, put it on paper, make a paper trail. What they've been used to is, no, I don't want that. Change whole advice, make it an approval for me, please. I tell everybody no. If it's a denial and I want to approve it or vice versa, I will document why and I will substantiate why, so you can understand each other better, because that makes them feel like, listen, this man really listening.
Yeah.
and I feel valued, and opportunities for growth. You know, a lot of the Vromi staff have been asking for a cultural change in terms of training, opportunities, management skills. So we've been looking at that. We've had a lot of persons in the last year go on training. I'm actually trying to get some of my sort of acting managers and people who I see with potential go into training courses because people just want an opportunity to grow.
Absolutely.
And with growth, it means personal development also means that you can potentially get more money to feed themselves and their families.
Absolutely. Real quick, I know that was the last one, but
No.
You mentioned burial ground and well cemeteries.
Yes.
The land acquisition to expand the to create more burial space. How are we doing with that?
Very good. So actually, the land is ours. It's been deeded and moved on. And actually, what I've done
Where is it?
Belvedere, but Belvedere remained. I
Okay.
think what's really important is that Belvedere is a pretty big plantation. So we know Belvedere Housing Project. That's the site closest to the road to French Quarter, and then Belvedere remainder is the parcels close to Oyster Pond Road. It's going to be split in two between the Ministry of Eckies and myself. They're doing historical restoration and preservation. We're doing a housing project, as well as a small cemetery. What we've done is that we actually got a request from an intern, a St.Maarten student actually living in Holland, and he's actually interning with us and actually finalizing the whole entire plan because he does spatial planning in terms of what that site needs to look like with close collaboration with major stakeholders involved as well. Because again, people think nothing is happening, but again, we don't want to have just a housing project. It needs to make sense in terms of use of land, drainage, green spaces. We're trying to make this a pilot that people don't necessarily feel like they're going into a housing project, they're coming into a community.
All right, we need to hear more from you too,
Yes.
Minister.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming in on a short notice, of course.
thank you.
And but in closing, what would
No,
you
in
like
closing,
to
St.Maarten, like I said in the floor of Parliament, serving is a privilege, which I'm happy I can do. And I will continue to do to my best objective as long as I have the opportunity. And I want to just tell everybody, like, you know, my messaging has been recognizing where communication lacks. Education is really important. I think one of my key things going forward is I'm going to be doing a lot more of these educational things. The videos are out. But really, let's start asking critical questions. Depoliticize the issues, ask critical questions, and if any information you need, I know I take a very long time to reply now because my emails are full, but ask yourself critical questions, ask yourself who's saying what and why. Because a lot of the things that are happening have been happening for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I'm trying to structure it. Do not let people fool you about what's going on. It's a lot of issues, but we have to do it together, and we're working hard to get it done together.
All right. There you had it, radio listeners and viewers, of course. The Minister of Vromi, Patrice Gumbs Jr.
Yes.
All right. You also got to make sure to add that junior.
Yeah, always. It's always.
And thank you again so much for coming in on short notice, of course, in the
thank you.
Breakfast Lounge this morning. And to you, the radio listeners and the viewers, of course, thank you all for tuning in. Tomorrow I'll be back here again with another guest in the Breakfast Lounge at 9 o'clock. Have a safe and enjoyable day.